It is officially prediction season in the NBA. The draft is done, free agency is done, most of the biggest trades are done, and now we got to figure out what's actually going to happen this season in the NBA. So I went through and looked at all the teams in the NBA, seeing what all of these experts are saying about them, what their win total is going to be, where they're going to finish in the conference, and I picked out a handful of teams that I think are very, very interesting in terms of what is being said about them in terms of the upcoming season and what could actually happen. Because if there's one thing that we know about predictions, it's that some of them are going to be very, very wrong. Let's begin with what I think is the most interesting team in the entire Western Conference this season, and it is the San Antonio Spurs. The upside case for them is basically you think that Victor Wembanyama is going to be an all-NBA caliber player this season, which towards the end of last year, he kind of was, and he honestly made a case to be on the season-long all-NBA team. If the season was another month or two with the way he was playing at the end of the year, he was making a case. And if you think San Antonio is going to be good this season, if you think that they're going to be a team that might push for 40 wins, maybe a play-in spot, it all revolves around Wemby being healthy, some of the additions they made on the roster from a veteran perspective in terms of Chris Paul, Harrison Barnes, and you think Victor Wembanyama is going to be a top 10 player in the NBA this season. That's all that it comes down to with San Antonio. Growth from the young guys, of course, veteran presences, of course, but it's Wembanyama. You just think that he's so good that there's no way an all-NBA caliber player of that level is going to be on a team that's going to win 30 games or something this year. The downside, if you don't think San Antonio is going to be that good, is just it's a little bit too early. It's still too young of a team. And even though there are advanced numbers that look really well on San Antonio last year when Trey Jones and Devin Vassell and Victor Wembanyama all played together, even though those advanced numbers do exist, you recognize that the conference is extremely strong. And to win 40-something games in the West this year would be a huge accomplishment for San Antonio. And it just feels a little bit too early, given the talent gap of their best player and the rest of the roster. Right now, experts are saying San Antonio's win total projection is somewhere in the 34 to 36 win range, which doesn't sound like a ton, but in a very strong Western Conference, and compared to what they were last year, that is a pretty significant jump. And for me personally, I'm more on the positive side of this. I could absolutely see San Antonio pushing for 40 wins, maybe trying to get into the play-in race. There's no real incentive for them to be bad this year. Wemby is going to get them to at least 30 wins because he's just that good. There's no reason for them to shut things down in the middle of the year. There's no reason for them to go and try and get a top pick. Having that experience of being in a real playoff race would be so beneficial. And so I think they're actually going to be even better than what some of these experts are putting out there in that 34-36 win range. Next up, let's talk about the Philadelphia 76ers. The upside case for Philadelphia is that they had the best offseason in the entire league, and their three-man group of Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, and Joel Embiid is the best three-man group in the entire league. It's the best big three that we don't really talk about big threes anymore in the NBA, but it's the best one of any team in the league. It works perfectly with Maxey as the on-ball creator, which is a role that Paul George has not wanted to play in the past and hasn't been as good at in the past. It puts Paul George in this like secondary scorer defender role that is perfect for him at this point in his career. And then you have Joel Embiid, who is an MVP caliber guy, and if healthy is one of the best players in the league, one of the best scorers in the league, and can anchor a defense as well. And they had a sneaky good offseason outside of that as well in terms of adding all of these depth pieces. And if you're on the positive side of Philadelphia this year, you see them as a true contender this season. A team that can challenge the Celtics to come out of the Eastern Conference and make the NBA Finals this season. If you're on the negative side of this, it's two big things. One, injuries. Paul George and Joel Embiid are two of the biggest injury question marks that we have in the league on a year-to-year, a game-to-game basis. And to think that that team is going to stay healthy with those two guys out there is just not all that realistic. It's not impossible to think that they could have a healthy season this year, but their success relies almost entirely on those two guys being healthy. The other part of this as well is they might not care that much about the regular season. In an Eastern Conference in which they're talented enough to be a top 4 to 6 seed, even without trying that hard in the regular season, and with the injury issues that I've already outlined, the regular season is not going to be important to Philadelphia. They're going to keep those guys, those two guys, especially Paul George and Joel Embiid, they're going to keep them on the sidelines. They're going to keep them on the shelf. They might play 50 games. They're not going to meet the 65 game threshold for all NBA and MVP. It's just not going to happen. Their number one goal is to get to the playoffs, be healthy, and challenge the Celtics and try and make the finals. That's the downside for them. And I find myself more on that downside for Philadelphia. It's not that they're going to be bad. I think they're a real threat to Boston in the playoffs if they're healthy. If they get there and everybody's ready to go and playing at their peak, they are as good as any team in the entire league. But from a regular season perspective, I don't think they're going to care at all. I could see Cleveland, Orlando, I could see those teams finishing ahead of Philadelphia in the regular season standings because they're just not going to care about how many wins they win in the 82-game regular season. They only care about the 16 wins that they need to try and win the title in the postseason. So I'm definitely a little bit more down on the Sixers in the regular season. Next, let's go to the Western Conference and talk about the Sacramento Kings. The upside for the Kings this season is essentially they're going to be able to outscore almost every single team in the league. They made their moves. They got rid of Harrison Barnes. They kept Malik Monk. They brought in DeMar DeRozan. They've got their core of Sabonis and Fox. And they're just going to be one of the best offensive teams in the league. They're going to play fast. They added even more scoring with DeRozan. They're going to shoot a bunch of threes this year to try and surround DeRozan with as much spacing as they can. And they have a great four-man group in the starting lineup. Keegan Murray, DeMar DeRozan, De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis. If those guys complement each other well offensively, then they just have to pick the fifth starter, whether that be Malik Monk, whether that be anybody else on the roster. Keon Ellis could be the fifth starter. And from an offensive perspective, that's one of the best teams in the league. The downside for the Kings, of course, is the other side of the ball. How in the world is this team going to guard? They have Keegan Murray, who's got good size. Then DeMar DeRozan and De'Aaron Fox and whoever else they put in the starting lineup, unless it's Keon Ellis, those guys are not going to be that impactful defensively. We know that Sabonis isn't going to be very good at the rim either. And you're looking at a team whose profile could be top 5 in offense, top 20 in defense. And what does that actually mean for this team in the regular season in a Western Conference that is absolutely loaded? And so if you're going to be pessimistic about them, it is definitely more on the side of, okay, they really need to play well. They can't afford to have off nights shooting wise. They can't afford for guys to get hurt. They have to outscore teams. And for me, I'm a little bit more on the negative side for Sacramento. I think the win total projections out there for them right now in between the 45 to 47 range feels about right. It's going to be kind of that cluster of teams with them. And maybe if you're a little bit more optimistic on Houston and then the Lakers and then the Warriors, they're going to be the Pelicans. They're going to be kind of right in that group. But because I don't really see any way that they're going to have the proper defensive personnel in some of these matchups in the Western Conference, I'm going to put them down maybe a little bit lower than this projection. Back to the East now, I want to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers. Their win total projection is somewhere in the 46 to 48 win range based off a lot of these experts. And the upside for them, obviously, is that they now have continuity. They have Donovan Mitchell signed, they have Jared Allen signed, they have Evan Mobley signed, they have Darius Garland signed. And in the long term, they might have to make some choices from a monetary perspective and fit perspective and all these different things, but they have steadied the ship this offseason. There's no Darius Garland trade rumors. Donovan Mitchell ended up staying. The front court is staying, we presume, because Jared Allen just signed a new contract. This is their core. And when you look at some of the advanced numbers 2 years ago, those four guys together were really, really good. Yes, it got weird last year, and there were times where they were better without Garland or without Mobley, and then Mobley played at the 5 in the postseason, looked really good when Jared Allen got hurt. Yes, we know that the fit of all four of those guys can be a little weird at times, but strictly from a talent perspective, this is one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. They continue to add pieces along the edges. They got better on the wing last year. And when you think about other teams in the East, like Philadelphia, that are trying new things, Cleveland has had this group for a little while. They're bringing in a new coach to try and change some things up offensively. And if you think that they're going to be really good, it all revolves around the continuity that they have and the talent that they have. On the downside, yeah, this team might not fit super well together. Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell might not add to each other's games. They might be a little bit redundant. Same thing with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. If we don't have an offensive jump from Evan Mobley this season, things are going to continue to be weird there. If he doesn't shoot threes, they're going to be a low volume 3-point shooting team as a result. And you're just always worried about the fit and the possible tension that could cause, not to mention the fact that the Mitchell thing isn't necessarily 100% solved in the long term. But for me, I'm pretty optimistic about Cleveland this year. I think that they're going to outperform a lot of people's expectations, especially relative to a weak Eastern Conference. And I could see them as a top 4, a top 5 team in the East this season. Like I said, I could see them being above Philadelphia in the regular season standings simply because Philadelphia is probably not going to care about the regular season. And this is certainly a team I'm keeping an eye on with some of their advanced numbers, some of their lineup numbers throughout the year, because I think they could be really, really good. Let's round it out now with the last team that experts seem to be pretty conflicted on, and that is the Dallas Mavericks. Their win total projections somewhere in the 49 to 51 win range, and this is a very difficult team to figure out. On the upside, they made the finals last year, and they were one of the better teams in the league after the trade deadline last year. Once they changed the roster around, once they added the guys that they have, that they're going to have going into the year, minus Derek Jones, of course they bring in Klay Thompson, they were one of the best teams in the league. They have Luka, they have Kyrie. Those guys played really well at times together in the postseason, and they're going to be able to guard. Like, their defense was really, really good last year. Derek Lively will continue to improve, and teams coming off of that kind of postseason success, you generally feel pretty good about going into the following season. The downside for them is this isn't exactly the same Mavs team. Derek Jones is gone. Klay Thompson now gets added into the rotation. A couple of other pieces got moved out as well. And it's hard to see if they actually improved or if they just changed things. Is their defense still going to be as good? But is that going to be counteracted by potentially better floor spacing, better three-point shooting with someone like Klay Thompson there? Is that group, Klay and Luka and Kyrie, going to work together defensively? Is that going to be enough size on the wing? There do seem to be more questions than maybe you'd like for a Dallas team that did just make the finals. For me personally, I'm pretty optimistic about Dallas as a team. I like the Klay addition, but during the regular season, I could see them a little bit more in that Philadelphia range where they want Luka to be healthy in the postseason, where he wasn't always healthy during the postseason this year. And it's going to maybe take some time for them to figure some things out in the regular season. In the playoffs, I see them as a top 4 team. I see them as a team that is absolutely a threat to make the finals, as they just did. During the regular season, though, I'm a little bit further down on Dallas than what some of these win total projections seem to indicate right now. And those are just the most interesting teams to me, but let me know down in the comments what you think about some of the predictions you're seeing out there in the league right now.